Big night in baseball. A lot to talk about in Major League Baseball, especially with the trade deadline just around the corner. And joining us on the show is the host of MLB Now, which I just had a chance to be a guest available, a panelist rather, a couple of weeks ago, which was so much fun. Always so cool to join those guys. It's weekdays at 4 p.m., plus MLB Network will feature the Dodgers at Phillies tonight and tomorrow afternoon. MLB Now is a show for the thinking fan, and Brian Kenny is its host. And Brian joins us this morning on the show. BK, how you doing?
Good, man. Good to be on with you. Now, this is the show for the thinking fan. Briefly.
Sometimes. I mean, only when you're on, really, is the only time we can claim that.
Not true.
We can only claim. So last night, Gary Sanchez has a couple of incidents where Yankee fans are undressing him for loafing, for lackadaisical play, including the final out of the game, not bursting out of the box. And there's this question with Gary Sanchez. He brings this great offensive bat, but defensively, maybe mentally, he's not all there. For the Yankees, do you think a question like this is a serious question, whether you can afford to have Sanchez in the lineup down the stretch?
Well, I think it's a matter of management, really. I mean, it's such an obvious thing last night. I mean, it's embarrassing for him. It's embarrassing for the club. It was so egregious. Like it goes beyond, just like the obvious, like you got to hustle and that sort of thing. But he makes it so easy. I wondered, like, is there no reaching this guy? Or, like, again, and I don't want to come down and say, well, you've got to discipline him. No, how about motivating him or speaking to him? And at a certain point, if he won't be motivated or spoken to, then you might have to punish. Because there were the two incidents. I mean, the one where he went after the passed ball, bounced off his leg, and he kind of just jogged after it. The guy scored from second base. And then you have that with, 2 outs in the game on the line in the ninth. I mean, it's inexcusable. But, again, I look at it. I was waiting to hear from somebody, maybe Aaron Boone or someone, to say, hey, by the way, he's in there for his bat. He's just coming off a groin injury. He's our catcher. We don't want him hurt. So we tell him don't run hard to first base because we don't want you to miss the rest of the summer. But they didn't say that. So there's better ways of handling it, although, of course, he's the one who's culpable.
It's kind of amazing to look up at the standings and see the Red Sox with a 6-game lead. I mean, the Boston Red Sox are 40 games over 500, 71 and 31. When do the Yankees have to think about, man, we just might not be able to catch a historically great Red Sox team this year?
Yeah, you might reach that point. I don't think they're there because things can swing in a week. Right now they're hot, but the Red Sox offense is so monstrous they might be able to keep this cushion. So I don't know. You don't concede that, I think, until you're in the last week to 10 days of the season. But I think it's going to force them to be active at the trade deadline. I mean, the Indians getting Brad Hand, I think that's the major mover because now the Indians are joining the super club. Because like the Yankees, even as good as they are, and they're really good, they're not better. It's not just the Red Sox. Like, they're not better than the Astros. And the Indians joining that group, if they get Brad Hand and they've got some sensational position players, they could find themselves being, the fourth best team in the American League, even though they're, potentially a 100-win team.
Do you think the 3 best teams in baseball are all in the American League with the Red Sox, Yankees, and Astros?
Yes, probably. Although the Cubs are very good and the Dodgers are very deep, but I would say yes to that.
Brian Kenny joins us, host of MLB Now on MLB Network. When it comes to the National League, it's kind of hard to figure the National League East because of the Braves and Phillies right now and what to make of the Nationals. When you look at the Nationals sub-500 ending July, what's the biggest reason that you put your finger on for why they just have been unable to succeed at what we thought preseason expectations were?
Well, that's tough. It's a general malaise. It's a general underperforming. They've had injuries, but lots of teams have injuries. Bryce Harper's had a strange year, fairly productive, but nowhere near what he's capable of. I think, not having a powerful Daniel Murphy or Ryan Zimmerman, both who were excellent last year, and the combination of Harper being down, being a guy who's not slugging 600, I think that brings them down quite a bit. And yet, I would still like if I'm looking at Atlanta, Philly, and the Nationals right now and say, who do you like the rest of the way? I don't know who you'd say, but I'd say I'd still like the Nationals.
which is so bizarre to say, but I think I would too. But I just don't know if they'll ever be able to shake themselves out of this. Is this poor leadership in your mind?
I don't think it's that. I mean, on one hand, you can say, Dusty Baker arrived and they were not winning, right? Under Matt Williams, they were not winning. They were a monstrous team, but they weren't winning. Dusty arrived for 2 years. They throttled the NL East. They won big. They won 90-plus games. They cruised to division titles, and then they canned him, and now they're back where they were, basically. And now that's an oversimplification, and yet if you're like Dusty Baker, you're correct in thinking that that's what happened, because that is what happened.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I think there is something, look, you know me, DA, I'm not like into the clubhouse chemistry and all that stuff. However, there is something to a team energy and a team dynamic, and it seems like in this case, I'll just say this, in this case, we're not making it up. Like sports writers normally make that stuff up. I think if you were to look at the trajectory of this Nationals team over the last 8 years, like when they became, powerful, like they went from weak to super strong, yet they've never won a playoff series. I think in this case, you'd be correct in saying that something is not adding up. The whole is not greater than the sum of its parts consistently.
You had mentioned the phrase super club. So the super team club, which right now involves the Astros, the Yankees, the Red Sox. Did you put the Dodgers in that club after they acquired Manny Machado?
Almost. Yeah, almost. I mean, I think, now they've kind of got a replacement, Corey Seager, which is really good. That's not a replacement player.
Yeah.
I think they're there. Plus, they're just very deep. They're very smart. They're very versatile. They have all sorts of guys that can play second base, shortstop, and outfield. They have all these moving parts. So, almost, not quite. And that's only because the Astros rotation is crazy. The Red Sox offense is crazy. So I think they're still a level above that.
Brian Kenny, host of MLB Now on MLB Network, joins us here on the show. 2 weeks ago, I joined you guys in studio, and this was decided. We debated and tried to decide whether the Athletics would become buyers or stand pat. Well, they went out and they acquired Jeurys Familia. We had a good conversation about that. Let's play a clip of this. This is myself, Brian Kenny, and John Heyman, as well as Al Leiter on the panel.
I mean, they've got a stadium in the balance. That's worth more than a prospect, a mid-level prospect.
If they make the wild card, they get a stadium, John? Is that what you're saying?
They might.
Come on. We're going to put all of that on this one run. They get a stadium.
I would give up a prospect.
Okay, well, you know what? If they can get a stadium out of this, then sell everybody because they need the stadium. I mean, come on. It can't come down to just that.
Good point. Yeah.
Not just that. It's to get in the playoffs.
Damon, I don't know about you, John, but I'm a little problem right now in this A block with Damon coming out.
I don't know what he's talking about.
So Heyman and Leiter not happy with my take there, but the A's did not listen. They did trade a couple of prospects, although they didn't really give up a lot for Jeurys Familia. Did you like the move for the A's to go out and acquire him?
Yeah, it's a nice move. It doesn't really change them tremendously. It just gives them a good guy in high leverage. I knew what the guys were saying at the time was that, and I know you agree with this. You aren't going against them, but you have to look long term. At the same time, for some organizations, grabbing a wild card is very valuable, and the A's would be one of those teams. I think there's still more moves for them to make. But I do like that. Just like I thought for the Yankees, when there's all this Yankee talk about Manny Machado, I was thinking, no, get Brad Hand. If you're the Yankees, you don't need Manny Machado. You really don't. What you need is Brad Hand, more high leverage, great pitching, and that's kind of what the A's did. Not great. I mean, Familia isn't at his peak, but he's still very good. And if he's floating around the 7th and 8th inning, it's a valuable guy. One
of the most amazing stories of the baseball season was what the Cardinals' Daniel Ponce de Leon did last night. He was struck in the head last year by a baseball. He had to have brain surgery. Last night, came back and threw 116 pitches and had a no-hitter going into the 8th inning. Absolutely amazing. When you watched Ponce de Leon last night, what were the thoughts that you had about that performance?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is amazing for him to be able to come back like that, and I think there's a lot of adrenaline that goes into it. We've seen, other players come back from, things not quite like that, but, come back after a long time planning and plotting. I know there's always a little outrage out there with, a no-hitter. I think we've kind of gotten past that. Hey, look, discretion is the better part of valor. whether he gets the win or not, and he didn't. And people were talking about that. He pitched 7 shutout, no-hit innings, and that's remarkable. And you have to think of his long-term future. You have to think of, what's best for the Cardinals down the stretch. So it's best, of course, to take him out.
Finally, we've had a lot of weird injuries in baseball over the years, but I can't remember the last time a guy had hand, foot, and mouth disease the way that we have Noah Syndergaard on the DL right now. Can you remember a hand, foot, mouth disease DL stint?
Well, look, he doesn't have kids, so that's what's puzzling. Like when you have kids, I have 5 kids, DA. When you have kids, you're sick all the time. I mean, those kids just make you sick. And what's funny is, like, you just call it Coxsackie virus. I mean, it's a serious thing. It's a bad sound. It's almost like you never hear of a player who misses a game because he has a cold. It just doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
He has flu-like symptoms.
Right.
So it's like a flu-like symptom. But you have a cold, and when you have a bad cold, you're in no shape to do anything. But you have to call it something else. So in this case, if you're the Mets, put something else on the press release. Don't say that.
Exactly. Just say he's out with a virus. You do not have to say
he's sick. He has a tummy ache. Right? He's got congestion, sinusitis. Do something.
Exactly. You can watch Brian Kenny hosting MLB Now, the show for the thinking fan, weekdays at 4 p.m. Such a good show. So much fun. Those guys have such a good crew and a good cast. Watch it weekdays, 4 p.m. MLB Network features the Dodgers and Phillies tonight and then again tomorrow afternoon as well. Follow Brian on Twitter as well, at Mr. Brian Kenny. Always good to catch up, BK. Thanks for having me on a couple weeks ago, bud, and we'll do it again hopefully soon.
We will. All right, Damon, take care.
Okay, you too. Brian Kenny joining us this morning here on the show.